and 75-year-old male back.
I've been a 911 dispatcher for 16 years. The job changes you in ways that are hard to articulate to those who haven't sat in the chair. You become a voice in the dark for people experiencing the worst moments of their lives. You hear things. Things that stay with you long after you've clocked out. 3 months ago, I started receiving calls that didn't fit the usual pattern. The first one came during the graveyard shift. 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. A woman's voice, barely above a whisper. "There's someone in my house." Standard procedure. I asked for her address, told her to find a secure location, assured her help was on the way. I stayed on the line while dispatching officers to 1421 Wexler Avenue. "Ma'am, are you somewhere safe?" "Closet. Upstairs bedroom." Her breathing was shallow, controlled. "Officers are 4 minutes out. Can you tell me where in the house you've heard the intruder?" A pause. "Kitchen. I heard dishes." I continued with protocol questions. "Did she live alone?" "Yes." "Did she have any weapons?" "No." "Had she seen the intruder?" "No." "They're coming up the stairs now," she whispered. I heard nothing in the background. No creaking steps. No movement. "Ma'am, stay quiet. Officers are almost there. They're outside the bedroom door." Still, I heard nothing. Adrenaline response can heighten senses, make people hear things that aren't there. I kept her calm, told her to stay hidden. "They're opening the closet door." Then silence. "Ma'am? Are you there? Hello?" The line remained open, but she didn't respond. Officers arrived 1 minute later, found the house secure. No signs of forced entry. No one home. The call had been traced to that address, but the house belonged to a Michael Garner, who had been away on business in Chicago for the past week. No woman lived there. I flagged the call as a possible prank, but something about it felt wrong. The fear in her voice was genuine. "I've handled thousands of calls. You develop an ear for authenticity." A week later, another call. Different number, different voice. A teenage boy this time, but the same address. "Someone's been in my room. They've moved things around." I recognized the address immediately. 1421 Wexler Avenue? "Yeah, how did you know?" I ignored his question, went through the protocol. "Name, James. Age 17. Parents home?" "No, out for dinner." "What makes you think someone's been in your room, James?" "My journal's in a different place. And my laptop was closed, but I always leave it open. And there's this smell." "What smell?" "Like hand sanitizer. But stronger. And I keep finding these black hairs on my pillow." "Long ones?" "I don't have long hair." I dispatched officers while keeping him on the line. They found James alone in the house, genuinely frightened but safe. Again, no signs of intrusion. The officers questioned the neighbors, who confirmed that the Wexler house had been vacant for months. The property was for sale following a foreclosure. There was no teenage boy living there. There was no one living there at all. The calls continued. Always from 1421 Wexler Avenue. Always different voices. Always terrified. An elderly man claiming someone was standing at the foot of his bed every night at 2:38 a.m. A young woman saying her baby's toys were being rearranged in the nursery when she wasn't looking. A middle-aged man whispering that he kept finding small cuts on his body when he woke up. Each time, officers found an empty house. Each time, the address registered as vacant. My supervisor suggested we blacklist the number, assuming it was an elaborate prank using spoofing technology. But I couldn't let it go. Those voices, the fear was palpable. Real. I pulled the property records for 1421 Wexler Avenue. The house had been owned by the same family for 30 years until the bank foreclosure 8 months ago. The Sawyers, Malcolm and Diana, with their children Emma and Connor. Further digging revealed that Malcolm had been laid off 2 years earlier. Financial troubles followed. Then Diana filed a restraining order against him 4 months before the foreclosure. The documents cited erratic behavior and concerns for family safety. That night I couldn't sleep. The voices from those calls echoed in my head. I pulled up news archives, searching for the Sawyer family. Nothing about deaths or disappearances. They had simply moved away after the foreclosure. I shouldn't have gone to the house. I know that now. But professional curiosity became personal obsession. After my shift ended at 6 a.m., I drove past 1421 Wexler Avenue. A typical suburban home with a for sale sign rusting in the front yard. Blinds drawn. Untended lawn beginning to overgrow. I sat in my car across the street for nearly an hour. The rational part of my brain told me this was inappropriate, possibly illegal. The other part needed answers. A neighbor walking her dog passed by. I badged her, identifying myself as emergency services doing follow-up on repeated calls. She was eager to talk. "That house gives everyone the creeps," she said, glancing at it. "Ever since what happened." "What happened?" She looked surprised. "You don't know? After they lost the house, Malcolm Sawyer had some kind of breakdown. Diana took the kids to her sister's. He wasn't supposed to contact them, the restraining order, but he kept showing up. Police came several times." She lowered her voice. "Then the family just disappeared. All of them. Diana, the kids, even Malcolm. Moving trucks never came. No goodbyes. Their cars just gone one day." "Was there an investigation?" "Police came, but nothing came of it. Diana's sister said they'd decided to make a fresh start somewhere else. Didn't want Malcolm finding them." I thanked her and left, more unsettled than before. That night, I requested the police reports related to the Sawyer family. 3 domestic disturbance calls in the months before they left. The final report included a statement from Diana. "He's not the man I married. Sometimes he stares at us like we're strangers. He stands outside the children's rooms at night." I shouldn't have gone back to the house. But 2 nights later, I found myself parked across the street again at 2 a.m., watching. The street was silent. Occasionally, headlights from a passing car would sweep across the facade of 1421 Wexler Avenue, briefly illuminating the windows. At 3:17 a.m., the exact time of the first call, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my dispatch center's number. "Hello?" I answered. "This is 911, what's your emergency?" My own voice responded. I froze. It was unmistakably my voice, my standard greeting. "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice continued from the phone. I hung up, heart pounding. Seconds later, it rang again. "Same number." I answered but said nothing. "I can see you outside," a woman's voice whispered. The same voice from the first call. "Why are you watching our house?" Through the windshield, I saw one of the blinds in an upstairs window move slightly. "Who is this?" I demanded. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. "Now you're part of it too." "Part of what?" "Who are you?" "Look in your back seat." My blood turned to ice. Slowly, I turned to look behind me. The back seat was empty. When I turned back to face the house, a figure stood on the front lawn. In the darkness, I could only make out a silhouette, slender, female, unmoving. I started my car. The headlights illuminated the lawn. No one was there. My phone rang again as I pulled away. I didn't answer. I called in sick the next day and researched everything I could find about the Sawyer family. Social media accounts abandoned 8 months ago. School records for the children transferred to homeschooling status, but no subsequent enrollment elsewhere. Diana's sister lived in Ohio. I called her, identifying myself as a 911 dispatcher following up on a series of calls. "I haven't heard from Diana in months," she said, her voice tight with what sounded like rehearsed control. "They needed space from the whole situation. That's all I know." "So they did come to stay with you initially?" A pause. "I need to go now. Please, if you've heard from them, even just..." "They're not here," she said sharply. "They were never here. I told the police the same thing. Don't call again." She hung up. That night, at work, I pulled the call logs for every interaction involving 1421 Wexler Avenue. The original responding officer's notes contained a detail I'd missed. During the search of the vacant house following the elderly man's call, they noted a strong chemical smell in the basement, possibly cleaning supplies. Hand sanitizer, but stronger, the teenage boy had said. I requested the full property history. Before the Sawyers, the house had belonged to an elderly couple who had died within months of each other. Before them, a single man who relocated for work. Nothing unusual. Then my terminal screen flickered. The property records I'd been viewing disappeared, replaced by a 911 call screen. A call that wasn't being routed through the system, it was only on my terminal. 1421 Wexler Avenue. Against protocol, against every rational thought, I answered. 911, what's your emergency? My voice was steady despite my racing heart. Heavy breathing on the line. Hello? This is 911. I found something in the basement. A man's voice this time. Unfamiliar. Behind the drywall. Sir, who am I speaking with? Malcolm Sawyer. The name sent a chill through me. I found what Diana did. What did she do, Malcolm? After I lost my job, I started having these episodes. Blackouts. Diana said I'd do things. Say things. Stand in places and not remember how I got there. His breathing became more labored. She drugged us. All of us. At dinner. I woke up in the basement. Sealed behind a new section of drywall. But the job was rushed. I broke through. My mouth went dry. Where are Diana and the children, Malcolm? Still here. All of us. Always here. Diana miscalculated the doses. By the time she realized what she'd done to the kids, it was too late. She couldn't live with it. Malcolm, I'm sending help too. No one can help us now. He interrupted. But we're not alone anymore. You've been listening. And now you're part of this house too. What do you mean? Look at your call log. The timestamps of every call from this address. I pulled up the log. Every call had come in at 3:17 a.m. The exact time I'd been parked outside the house. You answered our calls. Malcolm's voice had dropped to a whisper. And now we can call you anytime. From anywhere. We're in the system now. In the frequencies. In the lines. My terminal screen flickered again. The call disconnected. I immediately pulled up the active dispatch screen to send officers to the address, but my access was denied. I tried again. Denied. System acting up? My colleague asked from the next station. I can't dispatch to 1421 Wexler Avenue. She looked confused. Where? 1421 Wexler. I'd been getting calls from there for months. She typed the address into her system. There's number 1421 Wexler Avenue in our jurisdiction. The street numbers only go up to 1400. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not possible. I've been sending officers there. There are reports. She shook her head. Not from our department. I pulled up the county property maps. Wexler Avenue ended at 1400. The call log I'd reviewed earlier was no longer in the system. The police reports about the Sawyer family were gone. That was 2 months ago. I've been on administrative leave since my episode. At work. That's what they're calling it. My psychiatrist says stress-induced hallucinations aren't uncommon in high-pressure jobs like emergency dispatch. I've moved twice since then. Changed my phone number 3 times. But every night, at 3:17 a.m., my phone rings. Sometimes it's the woman. Sometimes the teenage boy. Sometimes Malcolm. Last night, I heard my own voice on the line. 911, what's your emergency? It asked. And in the background, I could hear faint scratching. Like fingernails on drywall. I've stopped answering the calls. But I know they'll keep coming. And I know, eventually, I'll have to answer. Because that's my job. That's what I do. I answer when people call for help. Even when they're not people anymore. The first time Emily Chin called 911 about the conspiracy against her, I almost believed her. "They're watching me," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "They've been documenting everything I do for months now." Standard procedure dictated that I categorize this as a potential mental health crisis, but something in her methodical delivery gave me pause. I'm not new to this job. 8 years as a 911 dispatcher in Portland means I've heard every variety of delusion, panic, and paranoia. This was different. "Can you tell me who they are, ma'am?" I asked, signaling my supervisor that I might need mental health support on the line. "Government contractors. Private security. I don't know who they report to exactly, but they work in shifts. The Asian man with the blue toga is morning watch. The woman with the curly red hair takes afternoons. Nights rotate between 3 different people." Her specificity was unusual. Most paranoid callers speak in vaguer terms: shadowy agencies, unnamed threats. Emily had details, routines, patterns she'd documented. "Have they threatened you in any way?" "They don't have to," she said. "They just want me to know they're watching. Yesterday, I received a package containing printouts of my own text messages from the past week. The day before, someone left a USB drive in my mailbox with audio recordings of phone conversations I'd had with my mother. I dispatched officers to her address, a garden apartment in a gentrifying neighborhood near Powell Boulevard. They reported back that Ms. Chin appeared anxious but coherent, with no immediate signs of mental health crisis. No evidence of the materials she claimed to have received. They classified it as unfounded, possibly a delusion, and recommended follow-up with mental health services. Case closed. Or it should have been. 2 days later, Emily Chin called again. "They broke in while I was at work," she said. "Nothing's missing, but things have been moved. My laptop was closed at a different angle. The plant on my windowsill was rotated. They want me to know they were here." Again, officers responded. Again, no evidence of forced entry or disturbance. The responding officer noted that Ms. Chin had installed 3 new door locks since the previous visit. I shouldn't have remembered her name. We handle hundreds of calls per week, thousands per month. But something about Emily Chen's case stuck with me. The precision of her observations. The complete conviction in her voice. The absence of the rambling tangents typical of paranoid ideation. When she called a 3rd time, I recognized her voice immediately. "They're escalating," she said, her composure finally beginning to crack. "I found cameras. Tiny ones, hidden in my smoke detectors, in the air vents, behind light switches. I have them. I can show the police." This time, I pulled up her previous incident reports while dispatching. The notes from her second call mentioned she worked as a data analyst for a healthcare software company. Not the profile of someone typically experiencing persecutory delusions. The officers who responded reported that Ms. Chin had indeed dismantled several smoke detectors, light switch plates, and air vents in her apartment. She presented them with what appeared to be standard electronic components that she insisted were surveillance devices. The officers, either trained in electronics, couldn't definitively confirm or deny her claims. They suggested she might want to consult with her landlord about the damaged fixtures and again recommended mental health services. During my next shift break, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up Emily Chin on social media. Professional curiosity, I told myself. Her profile showed an ordinary life, photos from hiking trips, posts about books she was reading, check-ins at local restaurants. Nothing unusual until about 7 months earlier, when her online presence became increasingly sparse. Her last public post, from 3 months ago, was a shared article about digital privacy protection. I knew I was crossing a line, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. I sent her a message. "Ms. Chin, this is Sarah from Emergency Services. I'd like to follow up on your recent calls. Please contact me if you're comfortable discussing further." 2 days passed before she responded. "Not on this platform. They monitor everything." She included a seemingly random string of numbers and letters. It took me a moment to realize it was an encryption key for a secure messaging app. I should have reported this immediately. It was a clear violation of protocol. Instead, I downloaded the app and entered the key. Her message appeared instantly. "Thank you for believing me." "I didn't say I believed you," I wrote back. "I'm just concerned. But you're here. That's more than anyone else has done." Over the next week, Emily sent me documentation, photographs of unfamiliar cars parked consistently near her home, time-stamped logs of unusual sounds in her apartment when she was supposed to be alone, screenshots of text messages that appeared on her phone and then disappeared. "Have you filed police reports for all of this?" I asked. "Every time. They take the report and nothing happens. No follow-up." I checked the system. She was right, 6 separate reports, all marked unfounded or no evidence of criminal activity. "Why would anyone be watching you?" I finally asked. "What makes you a target?" "I've been asking myself the same question for months," she wrote. "The only unusual thing I've done was accessing certain patient data files at work while debugging a system issue. There were anomalies in the records, treatment protocols that didn't match diagnoses, billing codes that didn't align with recorded procedures. I flagged it for my supervisor. 2 days later, the first car appeared outside my apartment. It sounded far-fetched, but specific enough to be troubling. Healthcare fraud is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Whistleblowers have been silenced for less. Have you documented the data anomalies?" I asked. "Do you have proof?" I tried to go back into the system to capture screenshots, but the records had been modified. That's when I started noticing other things. My email password changed. My apartment keys didn't work smoothly in the locks as if they'd been copied. My mail arrived pre-opened. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her in person. A public place, a coffee shop downtown, middle of the day, plenty of witnesses. I told myself I was performing a public service, helping someone in crisis. The truth was, I was curious. And maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe her. Emily was younger than I expected, early 30s, with straight black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had dark circles under her eyes and a nervous habit of checking the exits, but otherwise appeared completely normal. Not the wild-eyed conspiracy theorist I'd half expected. She brought a folder containing printouts, photographs, and handwritten logs. As she laid them on the table between us, I noticed her hands were steady. "I know how this sounds," she said quietly. "I know the standard explanation is that I'm experiencing paranoid delusions. I've researched the symptoms myself. But delusions don't leave physical evidence." She showed me photographs of what appeared to be small electronic devices she claimed to have found in her apartment. They could have been anything, parts from a remote control, components from a child's toy. Or they could have been surveillance equipment. I wasn't qualified to know the difference. "Have you shown these to the police?" I asked. "Every time," she said. "They take pictures, file reports, and nothing happens. The investigating officers never call back." The depth of her documentation was unsettling. Pages of meticulous notes recording unusual occurrences, times, dates, weather conditions, witnesses. If this was a delusion, it was extraordinarily well organized. "What do you think is the endgame here?" I asked. "If someone is watching you, what do they want?" Emily looked down at her coffee. "At first, I thought they just wanted to intimidate me into silence about what I'd found. Now I think it's something else. I think they're documenting my reaction. Gathering evidence that I'm unstable. Building a case." "A case for what?" "Involuntary commitment. Or worse." She lowered her voice. 3 weeks ago, someone accessed my physician's portal and added notes about increasing paranoia and concerns about potential self-harm to my medical record. I never said those things to my doctor. A chill ran through me. "Have you spoken to your doctor about this?" I tried. His office said he's on extended leave and his patients have been redistributed to other providers in the practice. When I asked to speak to the doctor who supposedly wrote those notes in my file, the receptionist said there was no doctor by that name working there. I left our meeting unsettled. Either Emily Chin was experiencing an elaborate, highly organized delusion, or something genuinely disturbing was happening to her. I couldn't dismiss either possibility. That night, I ran her name through our system again, looking for any calls or incidents I might have missed. Nothing unusual appeared. In fact, there were fewer records than I expected. The 6 police reports she'd mentioned were there, but her previous 911 calls were missing from the system. According to our records, Emily Chin had called emergency services exactly once, her most recent call, which I had taken. I knew that wasn't right. I'd spoken to her myself on at least 2 previous occasions. The next day, I checked with records management about the missing call logs. The clerk informed me that no calls from Emily Chen's number existed prior to her most recent one. That's impossible, I said. I spoke to her myself. Twice. The clerk shrugged. System says otherwise? Maybe you're confusing her with another caller? I wasn't. I distinctly remembered her voice, her address, the details of her complaints. I messaged Emily. Did you make 3 911 calls over the past 2 weeks? Her response was immediate. Yes. I spoke to you all 3 times. That night, my apartment door was unlocked when I got home from my shift. Nothing was missing, but my laptop had been moved slightly. The plant on my coffee table had been rotated. I told myself I was being paranoid, influenced by Emily's stories. I must have forgotten to lock the door. The laptop could have shifted when I closed it. The plant, well, plants don't move themselves, but maybe I had bumped it on my way out and hadn't noticed. The next day, all records of Emily Chin disappeared from our system. Every report, every call log, every note, gone. When I tried to search for her address, no results appeared. I messaged her on the secure app. Something strange is happening. Your records are missing from our system. No response. I tried calling her phone. The number was no longer in service. Breaking every protocol in the book, I drove to her apartment after my shift ended. The building manager told me no one named Emily Chin lived there. According to him, that unit had been vacant for 3 months during renovations, and had just been leased to a new tenant the previous week. But I've spoken to her multiple times, I insisted. She lives in 2B. He showed me the rental records on his tablet. Unit 2B had been unoccupied since February. I asked if I could see the apartment. He agreed, clearly humoring the crazy lady from 911. The apartment was empty except for a few paint cans and a stepladder. No furniture, no personal belongings, no evidence that Emily Chin had ever existed. As we were leaving, something caught my eye, a small white rectangular object tucked into the corner where the ceiling met the wall. When the manager wasn't looking, I reached up and took it. It was warm to the touch. At home, I examined the object. It could have been anything: a piece of a smoke detector, a component from an alarm system, a fragment of a light fixture. Or it could have been a surveillance camera. I tried messaging Emily again. No response. 2 days later, I received a package at my apartment. No return address, no postmark. Just my name and address printed on a white label. Inside was a USB drive. Against every instinct of self-preservation, I plugged it into my computer. It contained audio recordings of phone conversations, my conversations with Emily Chin. Conversations that, according to our system records, had never happened. The final recording wasn't a phone call. It was from the coffee shop where we had met. Our entire conversation, crystal clear, as if recorded by someone sitting at our table. The file was named Sarah_firstcontact.mp3. First contact. As if there would be more. That night, I noticed a blue Toyota parked across from my apartment building. In the morning, it was gone, replaced by a red-haired woman sitting on a bench with a clear view of my front door. I've started keeping logs like Emily did. Times, dates, license plates, faces I see repeatedly. I've checked my smoke detectors, my light switches, my air vents. I've changed my locks, my phone number, my email passwords. Yesterday, I received another package. Inside were printouts of text messages I'd sent to my mother last week. I called 911 this morning. The dispatcher was professional, concerned, responsive. She took all my information and said officers would be dispatched immediately. They never came. When I called back to follow up, the dispatcher told me there was no record of my previous call. I understand now why Emily's documentation was so meticulous. When reality itself seems fluid, you cling to whatever solid evidence you can create. Paper doesn't gaslight you. Photographs don't change their stories. I've tried to find Emily Chin. No social media profiles match her description. The healthcare company where she claimed to work has no record of her employment. It's as if she never existed. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe I imagined our conversations, manufactured our meeting, created the evidence myself in some fugue state. That would be the rational explanation. But then, who left the USB drive? Who sent the text message printouts? Who changed my medical records to include notes about increasing paranoia and potential signs of schizophrenia? Notes I discovered yesterday, supposedly written by a doctor I've never met? I'm writing all this down because I don't know how much longer I have before they come for me. Not with guns or handcuffs. That would create too much evidence, too many witnesses. They'll come with concerned expressions and mental health warrants. They'll point to my medical records, to the reports I've filed about surveillance that no one can verify, to my increasingly desperate behavior. If you're reading this, it means one of two things. Either I've managed to get this account to someone who can help me, or they've planted it themselves as the final piece of evidence, proof of a complete break from reality. I can hear someone at my door now. Keys jingling in the lock, keys I didn't give to anyone. One final thought before I hide this document. Emily Chin was right about everything except one crucial detail. This isn't about silencing whistleblowers or covering up healthcare fraud. This is the procedure itself. 7 minutes of silence. That's what I first noticed about the call. 7 minutes of absolute silence after the line connected. As a 911 dispatcher for 12 years in suburban Pennsylvania, I've handled thousands of emergencies. Gunshots, heart attacks, domestic violence, car accidents. But nothing unsettles me more than the silent calls. Sometimes they're mistakes, pocket dials, or children playing with phones. Sometimes they're people in danger, unable to speak because an intruder is in the house. Those are the ones that haunt you. This call came in at 2:37 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. Graveyard shift. Just me and 2 other dispatchers in the room. The caller ID showed a local cell number. Protocol says to stay on the line for silent calls. So I did, repeating the standard phrases. 911, what's your emergency? Hello? This is emergency services. If you can't speak, press a button on your phone. Nothing. Not even background noise. Just dead air, as if the caller was holding their breath. At exactly the 7-minute mark, I heard it. A single word, whispered so softly I almost missed it. Listen. Then the call disconnected. I tried calling back immediately. Straight to voicemail. I dispatched officers to the location, a residential address on Maple Street, where the phone had pinged. 20 minutes later, they reported back. House was secure. Residents were a middle-aged couple, the Hendersons, who claimed they hadn't called 911 and had been asleep all night. Officers noted nothing suspicious. I documented the call and moved on. Just another strange moment in a job full of them. 3 nights later, another call. Different number, but the same pattern. Silence for exactly 7 minutes. Then that whispered word. Listen. Then disconnection. Officers found nothing at the second location either. The homeowner, an elderly woman named Margaret Willis, was confused by the late-night visit. She lived alone, her phone was on her nightstand, and she definitely hadn't called 911. I noted the coincidence in my report. 2 silent calls, 7 minutes each, same whispered message. When I mentioned it to my supervisor, Dave, he shrugged it off. Probably kids. New TikTok challenge or something. But the 3rd call came the next night. And the 4th the night after that. Always at 2:37 a.m. Always 7 minutes of silence. Always from different numbers, different locations across the county. Always that same whispered. Listen. By the 6th call, even Dave was concerned. He pulled the audio files and listened himself. He agreed that the whispered words sounded identical each time, same voice, same inflection. We brought it to the police captain, who authorized a deeper investigation. The numbers were all legitimate, belonging to actual residents. None of the phones showed an outgoing 911 call in their logs. None of the residents had any connection to each other. Different ages, different professions, different parts of town. After the 10th call, I began staying late after my shifts, reviewing the case files. I created a map of all the call locations, looking for a pattern. Nothing jumped out, until I realized they formed a rough circle around Liberty Park, the largest green space in our county. The 11th call broke the pattern. It came at 2:37 a.m., as usual, but when I answered, there was no silence. Instead, I heard shallow breathing. A woman's voice, barely audible. He's watching me. Ma'am, who's watching you? Can you tell me your location? He made me call the others. I've done everything he asked. Please make it stop. Make what stop? Who made you call? 7 minutes. Her voice cracked. That's how long he gives them. That's all they get. The line went dead before I could respond. I dispatched officers immediately, hands shaking as I entered the address. This time, they found something. The house belonged to Rebecca Winters, 32, reported missing 3 weeks earlier. The officers found her cell phone on the front porch, still warm from use, but no sign of Rebecca. The door was unlocked. Inside, they discovered printed transcripts of 911 calls scattered across the living room floor. My 911 calls. The 10 silent calls from the past 2 weeks. Each transcript was meticulous, including timestamps and dispatch notes that weren't part of the public record. Someone had access to our internal system. The investigation accelerated after that. The FBI got involved. They discovered that while the previous calls had shown up as coming from different numbers, they had actually been routed through a sophisticated spoofing system. They had all originated from Rebecca Winter's phone. Security footage from traffic cameras showed no one approaching any of the houses on the nights of the calls. No cars passing by, no pedestrians. It was as if the calls had materialized from thin air. The only lead was Liberty Park. Based on my map, officers conducted a thorough search of the 200-acre space. In the northeast corner, the most remote section, they found a small cabin that wasn't on any official park maps. It appeared to be an abandoned ranger station from the 1970s, according to park records. Inside, they found a makeshift command center. Computer equipment, monitors displaying feeds from cameras aimed at various houses, the same houses where our 911 calls had supposedly originated. A police scanner. Printouts of shift schedules for our 911 dispatch center. And on the wall, photographs of me. Leaving my apartment. Shopping at the grocery store. Jogging in the park. Sitting at my desk through the window of the dispatch center. But no sign of Rebecca Winters. No sign of whoever had created this surveillance operation. The FBI set up surveillance on the cabin, but no one ever returned to it. The computer equipment yielded few clues. Everything had been purchased with cash at various electronics stores across 3 states. The cameras at the houses were wireless, battery-powered models that could be controlled remotely. Weeks passed. The case went cold. Rebecca Winters remained missing. I took a leave of absence, installed a security system in my apartment, and started therapy for the panic attacks that came every time my phone rang. I was home alone on a Tuesday night, 3 months after the last call, when my personal cell phone rang at exactly 2:37 a.m. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, hands trembling. No message was left. The FBI agent assigned to my case, Holloway, suggested I change my number, but I refused. If the caller tried again, it might give them another chance to trace it. 1 week later, at 2:37 a.m., another call. This time, I answered and immediately started the recording app that Holloway had installed on my phone. 7 minutes of silence. Then the whisper. "Listen." Before it could disconnect, I whispered back. "I'm listening." A pause. Then, "Check your email." The line went dead. I called Holloway immediately, then opened my email with him on speakerphone. A new message had arrived at 2:44 a.m., exactly when the call had ended. No subject line. A video attachment. Holloway instructed me not to open it until their tech team could examine it, but something on the email caught my eye. The sender address, winters83@gmail.com. Rebecca Winters. "She's trying to communicate," I said. "Don't open that file," Holloway warned. "We don't know if it's actually from her." I waited for the FBI to analyze the email. 3 hours later, Holloway called back. "It's clean. No malware, no tracking software. It's a video file, 30 seconds long." "What's on it?" A pause. "You should come to the office." The video showed Rebecca Winters. She looked exhausted, hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. She sat in a featureless room with white walls, speaking directly to the camera. "My name is Rebecca Winters. I am making this video of my own free will." Her voice was monotone, rehearsed. "I want to apologize to the 911 dispatcher who took my calls. I never meant to frighten you. I was conducting an experiment for my sociology dissertation on emergency response systems. Things went too far, and I realize now that my methods were unethical. The authorities have been alerted to my deception. There is no danger. There is no threat. Please forgive me and move on with your life." She blinked rapidly as she spoke the last sentence, her left eye twitching slightly. "That's it?" I asked. Holloway nodded. "We're trying to verify if it's genuine or coerced." Her doctoral advisor at the university has no knowledge of any dissertation on emergency services. Her research was on media influence in rural communities. She's blinking strangely, I said, watching the video again. The FBI brought in a specialist in nonverbal communication. He spent hours analyzing the 30-second clip. It's Morse code, he finally concluded. She's blinking a message. The message was short. Not safe. He has police access. 2 days later, a body was found floating in the lake at Liberty Park. Rebecca Winters. She had been dead for at least a month, according to the medical examiner. Cause of death: drowning, with evidence of sedatives in her system. The case exploded. If Rebecca had been dead for a month, who had made the video? Who had been making the calls? Internal Affairs launched an investigation into everyone with access to our 911 systems. Background checks, polygraphs, interviews. Dave, my supervisor, didn't show up for his polygraph appointment. When officers went to his home, they found it empty. Cleared out. Neighbors said he'd left in a hurry the previous evening, loading his car with boxes. His personnel file revealed troubling gaps. Discrepancies in his employment history. References that couldn't be verified. He'd been with our emergency services for 9 years, but his life before that was surprisingly difficult to confirm. They found a storage unit rented in his name. Inside was equipment matching what had been discovered in the park cabin. More surveillance photos. Files on each of the homeowners whose numbers had been spoofed in the 911 calls. And a journal, detailing a long-standing obsession with emergency response psychology. How people react in moments of crisis. How dispatchers handle the psychological burden of emergency calls. The journal's final entry was dated the day before he disappeared. The experiment continues. Subject has responded to stimulus. Personal contact initiated. 7 minutes remains the optimal window for psychological distress to peak without resolution. Next phase begins with direct observation. The FBI expanded their search nationwide. Similar patterns of 911 calls were discovered in 3 other states, stretching back almost 15 years. Always the same signature: 7 minutes of silence, a single whispered word, calls from spoof numbers forming a circle around a central location. They haven't found Dave yet. They believe he's operating under a new identity, possibly already established in another emergency services department somewhere in the country. I've left my job at 911. Left the town entirely. I don't tell people what I used to do for a living. But sometimes, my phone rings at 2:37 a.m. I never answer. I just listen to it ring, counting the seconds, wondering if somewhere, someone is counting them too. 7 minutes? That's how long he gives them. That's all they get. If your phone rings at 2:37 a.m., don't answer it. But if you do, if you hear 7 minutes of silence followed by a whispered voice telling you to listen, remember this. He's not collecting data for a dissertation. He's collecting reactions. Voices. Fear. And now, he might be collecting yours. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.